Hey everybody, I'm coming to you. This is week 3 of 2019, and for my third book of the year, I have chosen to read On Being Human by Erich Fromm. And so this was definitely a harder read. There are a lot of things I had to sit with and kind of think about because the language was a little more complex and some of the concepts were a little hard to understand, so I had to get to understand them. We have a special guest today. Say hi, Hamilton. Okay, anyways, I thought it'd be fun to have him. But this book was about 170 pages long, so it wasn't a super long read, but it was a bit more complex. So I'm going to go ahead and read the back and then go into my thoughts on the book. So it says, okay, you're done. It's ruining my video. It says, any attempt to identify the thread that runs through the late Erich Fromm's writings will soon uncover an unequivocally humanistic worldview. From the 1930s on, this was Fromm's guiding principle. It signified Fromm's break with the Frankfurt School, Marcuse, Giordano, and Horkheimer. This posthumous volume includes writings from one of Fromm's most fertile periods, the 1960s. These writings concentrate on humanistic science, socialism, religion, and psychoanalysis. They are from lectures, works written for specific occasions, and manuscripts intended as books. Of particular interest is an extended essay on two very different thinkers, Meister Eckhart and Karl Marx. So, like I said, this book was a little bit more challenging to read for me because there were a lot of complex ideas. And being that he wrote many of his lectures and writings from the 1960s, that was during the Vietnam and the wars, and so I had to put it in that context too as I was reading it to try to get a little bit more understanding. But there were a few things that I could take away from this book, even though it probably wasn't my favorite. But this is what it's about, not just about reading all your favorite books, but it's about expanding what you know and seeing what you can take away from it regardless. So his main idea throughout this whole book is this idea of being rather than having. And so there is one quote, where'd it go? There's a couple, but he wrote a speech for Eugene McCarthy, who was running for president, and that's probably my favorite part of this book, just because it was very inspiring. The things he wrote for him were things I feel like we're struggling in today's society about. And so one of the lines says, perhaps the greatest danger in our present system lies in the fact that things, gadgets, and technological accomplishments become more attractive than life and growth. And when I read that, I was like, oh yeah, like that's so true. We're so drawn to those flashy, just socially acceptable things. We're drawn to social media. We're drawn to our TV shows. We're drawn to the movies. We're drawn to all kinds of things. And we seek those things out instead of seeking out life, seeking out growth within ourselves, trying to better ourselves as individuals. And so we kind of, we kind of use technology as numbing for the things that we're dealing with. We don't want to deal with them. So when I read that, I was like, that is so true. And then one quote, the other quote that I found in here that I really liked was also from the same part of the passage of the book, the speech. And I feel like it has a lot to do with the last book I just read from Brene Brown, when she was talking about integrity. And so in here he says, we need reconciliation within ourselves between the values that we profess and the values that motivate us in our daily life. And so when I read that, I was like, that's so good. in this speech, he was talking about we need reconciliation between different races, between the young and the old, et cetera, et cetera. But also within ourselves. If we're not, living out the things that we say we value and believe, then we're not being wholehearted. And so that was another part that really stuck out to me. And then most of this book was talking about different religions. When it got into Karl Marx and Weiser Eckhart, that was kind of a little complex, and I had to sit back objectively because they were talking about different religions. So I had to be a little bit objective about it and take it for what it was. And I feel like, if anything, this is not a book that's going to directly impact me now, but it's probably going to be something I will come back to, and things might click for me later. And that's totally fine. Like, if you pick up a book and you read it and it all doesn't connect for you at that minute, like, that's fine, but it's in there. And so the next time you come across something, you're like, oh, I remember this, I remember that, and it just broadens your knowledge. So off of that, I would rate this book a 6.5, which is not very high. It wasn't, towards the end, I really did not enjoy reading it. I was just like, let's get this over with. But the middle part, that speech that he wrote for Eugene McCarthy, was probably my favorite part of this read. And then just some of his ideas on being and growth. And I think that's where I'm at in my point in life. And so those parts really stuck out to me. So if you're looking for an easy read, this is probably not for you. If you enjoy this type of stuff, then I would definitely grab it and read it, and be objective in your reading. Always know what you value and know what your beliefs are, and compare that with what other people are saying. And so I would rate this, like I said, 6.5. It was a pretty quick read. I had school this week, so a little busy, so I chose a shorter read to read. But I think it was just good to bolster my vocabulary and understanding of different things out there. And so this review is a little short and sweet. And next week, I'm going to be reading Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor E. Frankl. And this was actually a book given to me by our house church pastor. And they have like a little library of books. And so I'm kind of excited. This is more of a memoir, and as you can see, it's super tiny. So that's going to be a good one. And I think that's all I have for you. If you have any comments, if you think books like On Being Human or philosophy books are kind of like not your cup of tea, let me know below. Or if you have some good philosophy books that you think I could look into, let me know. I'm also taking a course this semester on theories. So if you have any good theory books as far as counseling goes, then let me know, and I'd love to know what you think. Other than that, thank you for joining in, and have a good evening.